Good morning, America. Breaking news. The ship at the center of the hantavirus outbreak arrives in Spain's Canary Islands. Passengers receiving medical assessments before disembarking. What happens next for the 17 Americans on board being escorted home by CDC personnel when they return to the U.S.? Our Dr. Darian Sutton is here to answer key questions.
Runway horror.
Everybody move away from the aircraft.
The dramatic new video capturing the chaotic moments after a Frontier Airlines plane struck and killed a person on the runway during takeoff.
We just hit somebody. We have an engine fire.
Passengers evacuated by emergency slides. This morning, the question, what was that person doing on the runway?
Boat blast, the terrifying moments on a charter boat near a popular Florida beach.
We saw 3 people flying off of the boat.
Rescue units responding to the scene. At least 11 people rushed to the hospital. The search for answers this morning.
Pope Leo's first year. The pontiff celebrating his first anniversary since becoming the leader of the world's Catholics. The church now seeing an upswing of the younger generation flocking to the faith.
Dua Lipa's lawsuit. The levitating singer suing electronics giant Samsung, why she's asking for millions of dollars in damages.
And playoff season is here. The Thunder now 1 game away from moving on, while the Cavaliers pull off a win. Plus, the Hurricanes make history in the NHL playoffs. And we can't forget the W as their new season gets underway.
Live from ABC News headquarters in New York City, it's Sunday. Good morning, America.
And we do say good morning, America, on this Sunday. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to Rhiannon.
Happy Mother's Day. Yes.
Oh, a great weekend for moms and a great weekend for sports fans as well. The NBA, NFL, WNBA, all in action. We have highlights ahead right here on GM.
Yes, we do. Also ahead, my interview with the foreign minister of Cuba, with his country on the brink of economic collapse under intensifying U.S. pressure and sanctions. What he said about elections and democracy coming up.
But we are going to begin with that breaking news overnight. Passengers are starting to be removed from that cruise ship that has been the focus of that deadly hantavirus outbreak. The ship arriving overnight at the Spanish island of Tenerife and docked just off the coast as health officials examine every passenger. ABC's Maggie Rulli is there with the latest. Good morning, Maggie.
Hey, Rhiannon, good morning. You can see that Dutch cruise ship, the MV Hondius, just anchored offshore right here. But I want to show you guys a little bit around this area. Look at all of the media here. Hundreds of them have come in from all over the world. They're tracking those 24 different nationalities on board as country by country, these passengers are being ferried off.
This morning, the luxury cruise ship at the center of the hantavirus outbreak, now offshore on Tenerife in the Canary Islands. The 87 passengers and 60 crew members, made up of 24 different nationalities, all receiving medical assessments and waiting in their rooms until their country is called to disembark. Given these notices, the passengers allowed only to leave with their hand luggage, the rest of their belongings staying on board for disinfection. A WHO doctor on board sending us this video of the evacuation.
Right here, these are the first people allowed off that ship. We can see around 5 people on board right now. They're all in full hazmat suits as they're being ferried to the shore here.
Passengers then seen boarding military-guarded buses before heading to the airport. Spanish authorities saying disembarkation will be carried out in groups based on nationality. Only when the aircraft bound for a specific country is on the runway, ready to fly to that country, will nationals of that country be disembarked and taken there using transport provided by the Spanish Army. For the 17 American passengers on board, the U.S. State Department announcing a special flight. CDC personnel will escort them on a chartered flight to the National Quarantine Unit in Omaha, Nebraska. It's the same facility used to quarantine patients in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, CDC officials tracking this new hantavirus outbreak say that there is no mandatory quarantine for those Americans returning to the U.S. We spoke with Dr. Steve Kornfeld, an American oncologist on board who stepped in to become the ship's de facto lead doctor after the original doctor got sick. On the phone, he describes the moment he realized he was now leading the response to a full-blown medical crisis on board.
Then it just kind of escalated. Within 24 hours after I stepped in, one of the patients died. And the other 2, the physician and one of the other staff members, were getting progressively thicker. And then the first news of hantavirus came out.
Boris Pavlin is the team lead for field and humanitarian epidemiology at the WHO. How worried should Americans be knowing that people that were on board this ship will now be taken stateside?
The average person has no reason to worry. This Andes hantavirus has spread in limited amount from human to human. It's a new name for a lot of people, but this is not a new virus. We've known about it for decades, and it's not surprising us.
The number of confirmed or probable cases worldwide climbing to 8, with 2 more under investigation. 3 people have died. In the United States, health officials are monitoring at least 9 Americans in 6 states, Arizona, California, Virginia, Texas, Georgia, and New Jersey, for possible infections, though none have shown symptoms.
And guys, the flight for those Spanish passengers who were earlier evacuated is taking off right now. But for those 17 Americans on board, officials have told us they will be the last group to leave today. And also, guys, despite the Spanish government saying they want everyone off of this cruise ship, off of the Canary Islands as soon as possible, we've been told that Australians and New Zealanders on board won't be leaving till tomorrow, which means this ship will stay here for one more night. Rhiannon.
All right, Maggie, and thank you for asking what this means for the average person. I know that's what people at home are wondering. Great reporting there, Maggie. And to break this down even more for us, ABC News medical correspondent Dr. Darian Sutton joins us now. So let's talk about this, Dr. Sutton, because this is on a lot of people's minds. Health officials say there are no plans at this point for that mandatory quarantine of the passengers once they get to Nebraska. What does that mean? What does that say to you?
Well, although this response has been highly visible, CDC teams transport and transfer to the National Quarantine Center, that response means that federal health officials essentially do not currently believe that this poses a high risk of widespread community transmission. So what we know is that these 17 passengers will be flown to Nebraska, the National Quarantine Unit. This is a specialized facility that specializes in highly infectious or potentially infectious diseases. And if they are cleared at that point, passengers will be allowed to go home and self-monitor for up to 42 days. Now, that tells us that decision suggests that public health officials believe, again, that the risk of widespread community transmission is low. Important to note here, the World Health Organization is qualifying this as a cluster, not an outbreak, meaning that it is geographically isolated to the boat. At this point, all confirmed cases have been in passengers who have been on the boat. There have been no point at this point a confirmed case of a person who has been exposed beyond the boat. So that's important to understand.
What's so special about that specific facility there in Nebraska right now?
Well, this is one of those high-tech biosecurity facilities. It's really the only one in the United States, built just at the start of the pandemic. And this is built to basically maintain and keep a highly infectious disease. There's nurses, doctors, and specialized staff here who can help prevent an outbreak. Now, they will be screened here at this facility. If a person were to test positive, they will likely be kept there, but they will be allowed to go home. And again, the risk of getting this infection from person to person, although it is possible, it is still low. This is not the significance of COVID or the flu. You really need prolonged exposure to another person who's infected to get this type of infection.
So, doctor, this is something on the minds of so many people. We've been hearing. We see the medical personnel with the protective gear out there, brings back these haunting memories of the COVID pandemic. But you and the experts say this is different.
This
Why
is very
is that?
different. You know, they're in those PPE uniforms when you see them, because that's an active investigation. They're still working to understand, where did this initial exposure happen? Of course, there's an assumption that there is a passenger that got on the boat with this infection, but there's still a possibility that they might be in an active scene. So that's the reason why we're seeing that level of precaution. But when you look at the rate or efficiency of this virus getting from one person to another compared to COVID or the flu, this is not an efficient virus. Again, it requires prolonged contact. And we were discussing before the break, the reason why we're seeing it on a boat is because cruise ships and boats provide that opportunity. There's close contact. There's a lot of high-touch surfaces, shared water and food systems. That creates this opportunity. We do not normally see this in the community. That is why this is graded as a low risk.
And we know that that is calming a lot of fears right now. To hear you say that, Dr. Darian Sutton, thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, we are going to turn now to new details in that deadly incident at Denver International Airport as a plane on its takeoff run struck and killed someone who authorities say was a trespasser on the runway.
Everybody move away from the aircraft.
This morning, dramatic new video capturing the chaotic moments that unfolded after a Frontier Airlines plane struck and killed a person on the runway late Friday night. Hundreds on board forced to evacuate on the runway at Denver International Airport, deplaning on these emergency exit slides.
Tower Frontier 4345, we're stopping on the runway.
Now an urgent investigation is underway to identify the person killed and piece together why they were out there.
There was an individual walking across the runway.
Authorities say the victim, who is not believed to be an airport employee, jumped a perimeter fence, making it onto the runway. Just 2 minutes later, they were struck by the aircraft as it was taking off for its flight to Los Angeles.
We was getting ready to take off, and then it felt like a big speed bump. And then I look to the right, I see the wing is on fire and it's sparking.
We just hit somebody. We have an engine fire.
I look around. Everyone else is freaking out, panicking. Some people can't breathe, and that's when I see smoke starting to come in.
All 231 people on board immediately evacuated, passengers describing those terrifying moments.
People that could see the engines could see large flames, and it was really scary. So people were yelling, "Fire, fire."
Emergency crews rushing to the scene with buses taking everyone back to the terminal. 12 people reporting minor injuries, 5 of them transported to local hospitals. The Denver airport saying ultimately the majority of passengers took other flights. And we can't say enough how incredibly dangerous it is to walk onto an active runway. We don't know why that person jumped the perimeter fence and did just that, but by all accounts, it appears that the pilots did everything that they were supposed to do to keep these passengers safe.
Wow. Thank you for that, Gio. Yeah. We turn now to the boat explosion in the waters off Miami Beach. Rescue workers rushing to the scene with those on board taken to hospitals. ABC's Ike Ajachi has the latest. Ike, good morning.
Good morning,
this is scary.
This was a frightening explosion on the water in Miami. A charter boat erupting in flames near a packed sandbar, sending people flying into the water. More than a dozen rescued, several rushed to the hospital, and now a major investigation is underway.
Evidence of a possible boat explosion, multiple people in the water.
This morning, an urgent search for answers after a terrifying boat explosion in a popular Miami hotspot, leaving more than a dozen people to be rescued.
We saw 3 people flying off of the boat.
The explosion happening on a charter boat near the usually packed Hollover sandbar.
My buddy who's a fisherman was going by and he said he just heard a boom.
A massive response swarming in after the initial call around 12:45 p.m. Saturday afternoon.
We've got a boat explosion at the fuel docks.
The operation, considered a level 2 mass casualty incident, more than 24 fire rescue units rushing to the scene, along with multiple additional emergency teams scrambling to get those boaters and bring them to safety. Miami-Dade Fire Rescues saying they found 15 patients.
Our units found multiple patients with various injuries, some burns, some minor injuries.
Witnesses describing the harrowing moment the boat exploded.
It was an explosion in the bilge of the boat.
It's a real quick thing because all of that ignites right at once.
At least 11 people rushed to the hospital, ambulance after ambulance pulling in as those passengers received treatment. Officials, including the U.S. Coast Guard, urgently investigating the scene. The boat towed away just before 6 p.m. And this morning, investigators are still working to pinpoint exactly what caused that explosion, with early indications it may have started in the boat's engine area. Now, officials say several people remain hospitalized as they continue to piece together what went wrong during what was supposed to be just a nice day on the water, guys.
Yeah, alarming scene. All right, Ike, we appreciate it. Turning now to the war in Iran, President Trump still waiting to hear from Tehran on the administration's latest peace proposal. And U.S. Central Command says American forces have redirected 58 commercial vessels and disabled 4 since April 13th as part of the U.S. blockade against Iran. Let's bring in ABC News Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz, who will be hosting This Week later this morning. Martha, good morning to you. So what do we know right now about the latest U.S. peace outline and why Iran still hasn't responded?
Well, we've just been waiting and waiting. We've heard from the administration as late as Friday. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said we expect something from Iran by the end of the day. That did not happen. We do not know why, but Iran seems in absolutely no hurry. Now, this proposal basically says let's stand down for 30 days. The U.S. won't block the Strait, and Iran won't lay mines or do anything else to inhibit ship traffic. After that, during that 30 days, they're supposedly going to talk about some sort of nuclear agreement, which would be a very, very short window to try to come to terms on that. So we are just waiting, Whit. We don't know why. We're going to ask about that this morning for sure.
Yeah, and so much at stake in just the coming days here. Also, the global turmoil is having a major economic impact here at home, especially with soaring gas prices. You've been speaking with voters in Pennsylvania. What are they saying about all of this?
Well, these are key districts, and I spoke to some people there, and Everybody is seeing this change. Everybody, they feel it when they go to the gas station and they worry about what comes next, when this will end. But as for looking at President Trump, those diehard Trump supporters say this, they repeat the president's rhetoric, basically, saying this is a small price to pay if he can stop any sort of nuclear bomb. But others are absolutely outraged. Why did it start? What are we doing? How do we end it? And that is the big question this morning, Whit. How do we end it?
Exactly, and critical in this midterm election year. Martha Raddatz, as always, we appreciate it. Tune into This Week later this morning. Martha speaks with U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, about the latest state of negotiations to end the war with Iran. Plus, infectious disease expert Dr. Michael Osterholm discusses what we know about hantavirus. Gio?
Okay, Whit, now to Pope Leo, the first American to lead the Roman Catholic Church. And this weekend, he begins his second year as pontiff. This as we witness a surge of interest in the Catholic Church. ABC's Melissa Adon recently traveled with the Pope to Africa and joins us now with more. Melissa, good morning.
Hey there, Gio. Good morning. So Pope Leo hosting a prayer this morning at St. Peter's Basilica as this weekend marks his 1 year as pontiff. Well, the American Pope recently visited Africa, and yes, I was part of the traveling press with him. This trip highlighting the growing rise of Catholicism in Africa, and it's something we too are seeing right here across the U.S. 1 year ago this weekend, the first American Pope was elected.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Across the U.S. and around the world, Catholicism is on the move. A driving force behind this, a new generation.
Come to church with me and 300 other Gen Z Catholics in New York City.
Leading to surges of Catholic converts from New York City to Los Angeles. Dioceses across the country this year reporting doubling or even tripling their average number of new Catholics. Much of it moved by young people.
My name is Anthony, and a couple months ago I was visiting and ranking every Catholic church in the Big Apple. And I did it with one goal: find community.
We discovered the same sentiment in Africa, the fastest growing region of the Catholic Church worldwide, driven by youth.
What significance is it as a young person that is Catholic?
Oh, everything. It's good to be a young Catholic because you're having some movement in church.
The great enthusiasm, the joy of the people was absolutely fantastic.
Within his first year, the 70-year-old pontiff making strides, visiting Turkey and Lebanon for his first papal trip in the fall. Then in the spring, he headed to Monaco.
I think there's a little bit of the Leo effect.
The Los Angeles Diocese welcomed more than 8,000 new Catholics for Easter this year. They are projected to more than triple the amount of new converts from last year.
He's speaking in English. He understands the U.S., and so it's getting to people directly, in a way, unmediated.
Now, Pope Leo has several papal visits in store this year. Next month, he's off to visit Spain. Then later this year, there are plans for France and possibly a trip to Latin America. That is a place very dear to the American Pope's heart. But there's no word yet, guys, on when he will visit the United States. Guys.
And Melissa, you've been following the Pope all year long. What's your biggest takeaway on his first year?
Honestly, Gio, of course, the trip in Africa was so impactful because just seeing the people, the hope, and so much of that excitement just rise through people was really inspiring. For them, Pope Leo was absolutely a beacon of light and hope. And it's a prayer that I think, and a sentiment a lot of people around the world, even here in the U.S., have.
And we enjoyed following your reporting, Melissa. Thank you for that.
Meanwhile, former Disney chairman Bob Iger receiving an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from Howard University in Washington, D.C. Iger calling the accomplishment the honor of a lifetime.
Over the years, I've been very fortunate to have received a number of awards here and there, and I don't take any of them lightly, but I must say there's something very special about this. Part of it is the personal connection that I have through Chadwick Boseman and my friend Reggie Simmons. Part of it is just what Howard stands for, its reputation, its meaning.
And you heard there Iger mentioning his friendship with his friend Reggie and actor Chadwick Boseman, who tragically passed away from colon cancer. Iger said that Boseman didn't just attend this historically black college, he carried it with him. Both Iger and Disney really share a deep connection to Howard, with millions committed to the Disney Storytellers Fund and to support the building of the Chadwick A. Boseman College of Fine Arts Center.
Wow, a big congrats to Bob.
Yes, what an honor for sure. Coming up here on GMA, my interview with Cuba's foreign minister as the government faces mounting economic pressure from the U.S. and what he said about democracy.
And singer Dua Lipa is suing electronics giant Samsung.
And NBA playoff fever. Lakers fans, don't come for me, but the Lakers are in a bad spot, down 3-0 against the Thunder. The overnight highlights and a look ahead to today's big games.
We have to stop him! Throw something!
I can't! I might hit Jack.
Throw me. Bob, throw me!
And welcome back to GMA. It is Mother's Day, and we are celebrating all the super moms and motherly figures out there, including Elastigirl from the Disney franchise The Incredibles. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms who really go the distance. And if you're looking for some fun films to watch with Mom today, Will Gans, you know he's got you covered. That's coming up in Binge List.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Yes. All right, we do want to take a look at some of the other stories that we're following on this Sunday morning. Singer Dua Lipa suing electronics giant Samsung. Court documents show Dua Lipa accuses the company of unauthorized use of her image on boxes for Samsung televisions. She's asking for $15 million in damages.
One of Major League Baseball's greatest managers has died. Bobby Cox managed the Atlanta Braves for 25 years. He took the team to the World Series 5 times, winning once in 1995. He led the Braves to 14 straight division titles and was named to the Hall of Fame in 2014. Cox was 84.
Oh, the WNBA. You guys know I love basketball. The season opener started with bling and ended in a blowout loss for the Las Vegas Aces. Remember, guys, these were the 2025 champions, and they got their championship rings on Saturday, but that moment got eclipsed by the Phoenix Mercury because Phoenix won this one 99-66. That is the WNBA's largest margin of a defeat in a season opener for a defending champ. And the drama in Indiana. The Fever falls short to the Wings. Caitlin Clark, back on the active roster, puts up 20 points, marking her 1,000th career point, but Dallas outlasted the Fever. By the way, this was AZ Fudd's WNBA debut in the regular season. They had a narrow win. It was really close, 107-104. This is the first time in the WNBA in a season opener that both teams scored 100 points.
You are a true fan.
I
You really are.
Love it.
I'm glad you did that story. Thank you, Rhiannon. All right, now to the growing crisis in Cuba, as the U.S. recently announced a new round of economic sanctions. And Whit, you were there on the ground in Havana just a few days ago, and you actually had this really revealing interview with Cuba's foreign minister.
That's right, Gio, and there's so much on the line here. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez told me there has been no progress in recent talks with the U.S. He did agree to answer some of my questions in English, and this is how he responded when I asked what, if any, changes or government reforms Cuba would be willing to make.
You mentioned some issues, prisoners, human rights,
free and fair elections.
Free and fair elections. I dispute this allegation. I recommend you to see concrete evidence.
What do you dispute about free and fair elections?
Well,
it's one socialist communist party, essentially one family, that has mostly ruled Cuba for nearly 7 decades.
I'll come back to this issue, but I was saying that Cuba is a country with our own history, with our peculiarities, and we are a free and independent nation. But Cuba is a democracy, is a different democracy. Well, you mentioned
Cuba is not a different democracy. When people go to the polls, it is often one candidate, one party. There is not choice. What do you worry would happen if there were free and fair elections in Cuba, if the people truly got to choose?
Well, you are presenting a prejudice.
Oh, he never did answer that question. I also pressed the foreign minister about releasing political prisoners, something U.S. officials insist needs to be part of any deal. The foreign minister told me, quote, "There are no political prisoners in Cuba." I reminded him that is widely disputed by human rights organizations who estimate there are likely hundreds being held behind bars. This conversation, guys, made it really clear to me that the two sides, the U.S. and Cuba, still remain so far apart on many of the key issues.
So far apart, and what I've got to say, as a Cuban American whose family lost everything to communist Cuba, this was a really striking interview to see him responding in that way. And we know the human rights groups have long said that dissenting voices are often silenced, they are imprisoned. You spoke with everyday Cuban.
Yeah, I talked to them, Gio, and I know that we've had this conversation before with your family heritage. And I got to say, being in Cuba, I was so moved by the resilience and the ingenuity of the people there. I mean, imagine what it's like when a carton of eggs costs more than what you make in a month, your salary, or a gallon of gas is $40 and the gas stations are closed because nobody can afford it. And so there's this like black market that is growing where people fill up their tanks at a discount. Where does that gasoline even come from? So there are all these complicated layers to the economy. So much of it doesn't make any sense. And people have been living with this for years and years. Now, there are different opinions about what should happen next, but there is a growing sense of desperation. And so many people we spoke with do want change.
And it's so important for Americans to see what the people of Cuba, what they're dealing with.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Whit. The teams looking to pull ahead or gain some ground in the NBA and NHL playoffs. ABC's Ike Ajachi and Andrew Dimbert were both up late to catch all the action. We're going to start
You were
with
up late pretty too.
I was watching the W, but you two had the NHL and the NBA covered. Ike, let's start with you because we were just talking during the commercial, and we don't know if Shea can be stopped.
You know, he's looking really good right now, and so is his team. Yesterday, let me tell you, it was all about statement wins and remember me moments in the NBA playoffs. We're going to start with LA, where the defending champs Oklahoma City just keep hitting the gas. The Thunder improved to a perfect 7-0 this postseason after absolutely blowing the game open with that 33-20 third quarter against the Lakers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Shea Butter, he was in control all night, dropping 23 points as OKC took full advantage of a Lakers team still without Luka Doncic, who's out with that hamstring injury. Now, one of the plays of the night, A.J. Mitchell leading a break, throwing down the hammer. Look at that, right in transition as the Thunder turned defense into instant offense and silenced the Crypto.com crowd. OKC up 3-0 in that series. Now, earlier in Cleveland, it was vintage James Harden. Get this. In winning time, yes, after 2 quiet games, he silenced the chatter with 19 points, 9 of them coming in the fourth, all to help the Cavs grab their first win of the series over Detroit, 116-109. Harden hit 3 massive buckets in the final minute and a half, including that signature step-back 3 for the dagger as Donovan Mitchell led all scorers with 35 points. And now today's slate, the Knicks can break out the brooms in Philly with their up 3-0 on the Sixers, while the Spurs look to push Minnesota to the brink, leading that series 2-1 heading into
You're just rubbing it in.
I know.
Where's that
I love
Knicks
it.
jersey?
You still got a chance. It's under this like Superman.
All right, they still have a chance. Let's bring in Andrew now to talk about the NHL playoffs.
All right, the race for the Cup continues, starting in the East, where the Carolina Hurricanes didn't just beat the Philadelphia Flyers, they blew through Philly like a Category 5. Facing elimination, the Flyers fought until the final horn, Alex Bump tying the game midway through the third period. But Carolina had too much storm surge, outshooting Philadelphia 36-15 in regulation. Still, this one went to overtime, where Jackson Blake buries the game winner to send Carolina to the conference finals for the second straight year, where they finally will not face the Florida Panthers, who are not in the playoffs. While out west, a wild one, the Minnesota Wild scoring an avalanche of goals, handing Colorado their first loss of the postseason in a 5-1 rout. U.S. Olympic gold medal winner Quinn Hughes scoring to give the Wild the lead early, and Minnesota wouldn't let go, winning this to make it a series again. Colorado still holds serve, though. They lead this series 2-1. And tonight we've got a pair of puck drops you won't want to miss. The Sabres take on the Canadiens at 7 p.m. That series all squared up at 1 game apiece. Then at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, the Golden Knights face the Ducks. Catch all the action on ESPN.
Philly fans are coming for both of you.
I feel like we need to send some love to Philly. We still, and there's still a chance. Hang in there. Back now with Binge This and a special Mother's Day edition. Will Gaines is here. Oh, there it is. Okay, we haven't had the air horn in a while, so bang, here we go. What's good for watching with the whole family?
All right, got some good recommendations. This year it's got to be Tangled, an animated Disney classic featuring the vocal stylings of one Mandy Moore and Tony Award winner Donna Murphy, belting out that song Mother Knows Best, a true Mother's Day anthem, of course. Check out Tangled on Disney Plus as we count down to the release of the live-action version that's headed our way, which will star Kathryn Hahn as Mother Gothel, which is just genius casting. Or you can check out Sally Field, and she's starring in Remarkably Bright Creatures that just dropped this weekend on Mother's Day on Netflix. Sally plays a widow who works as a cleaner for the local aquarium. She strikes up an unlikely friendship with an octopus there, as well as the new maintenance man, Remarkably Bright Creatures, streaming now on Netflix.
By the way, that is one of the best books I've ever read.
Yeah.
It's so good if you have time to read it before you watch the film on Netflix. So what if we're looking for a throwback?
Okay.
Featuring a beloved matriarch?
Yes, Soul Food has Mother's Day written all over it, the 1997 movie about Big Mama and her weekly Sunday dinners and the power of coming together. Features performances from Vanessa Williams, Vivica Fox, just to name two of the ensemble. Boyz II Men performs the original song, Song for Mama, in the soundtrack. You can rent or buy the dramedy for under $5 on Amazon Prime Video right now. And if you've never seen Lady Bird, this is the movie that made me call my mom when I walked out of the movie theater to tell her that I love her. It stars Saoirse Ronan as a Sacramento high schooler ready to leave her town and her mom behind. Laurie Metcalf earned an Oscar nomination for playing Lady Bird's overworked and underappreciated mother, and the movie was written and directed by Greta Gerwig of Barbie fame. You can buy that on Prime Video.
I'm glad you called Mom.
Yes.
What about some Academy Award nominated Mom?
All right, the mother of all movies and the mother of all actors. Meryl Streep stars as Miranda Priestley in The Devil Wears Prada 2. Meryl Streep was nominated for an Oscar, y'all, for the first movie, which almost never happens for a comedy, let alone for a so-called chick flick. But the performances, writing made the first Devil Wears Prada an endlessly quotable classic, and this is a worthy sequel. Timely, sharp, brilliantly acted. Devil Wears Prada 2 in theaters right now.
Great recommendations. Love it. Coming up on GMA, more about Mother's Day. The mother's who is turning her son's love of cookies into a sweet success, and it's all for a good cause.
Ooh.
We're back now here on GMA with a wonderful Mother's Day story. You guys are going to love this. The mom who turned a baking into a business thanks to her son's inspiration. Ashley Cameron has always loved to bake, but her favorite hobby took on a whole new meaning after her 5-year-old son Charlie was diagnosed with Kawasaki disease.
It's the #1 cause of acquired heart conditions in children. And through that journey and treatment, it stopped our family in its tracks and changed a lot of things for us.
When Charlie was finally ready to leave the hospital, Ashley was determined to welcome her little boy home in exactly the way he wanted.
So I asked him what was the one thing in the world that he wanted to do. His answer was simple. He just wanted to bake cookies with mommy.
And that is exactly what they did.
I got my cookie helper here. Can I try it?
Baking recipes passed down from Ashley's mom and grandma.
My husband came home from work one day and was like, these cookies are so good. You should think about starting a little cottage home food business. And so I did. And that business just kept growing.
Love and Cookies was born.
He was joking about all the cookies that were all over the counter. And he said, you know, there's just nothing better than a mother's love and a really good cookie.
Now they're selling batches of their frozen, preservative-free gourmet cookie dough across the nation, with part of the proceeds going toward the Kawasaki Kids Foundation.
We wanted to help and give back because the best medicine that we can provide is raising awareness for this disease.
Now we're all ready to get some yumminess in the oven and then in our tummies.
If any mom out there was listening, sometimes when life throws you dark moments, the most beautiful things can be born out of that experience. To do something great and take a chance that you never thought you could have.
He just turned 12 and he's doing great. He's playing baseball, he's playing soccer, he's doing all the things. The greatest news to hear on Mother's. Oh my gosh.
Speaking of Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Good.
That
And
is
happy
so
Mother's Day to
sweet.
all of you. We are sending these flowers through the screen right now.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone. Thank you.